Okay, to all my young people in the audience, when you go into public service and someone's stuck in traffic, you got to know how to wing it. So let's do this together, everybody. And if Strautmanis comes soon, well, he'll be able to swap out with me. So welcome, you guys. Welcome to University of Chicago and the IOP and this incredibly important conference. And this is so great to have you guys here because we want people to understand what can be done by young people in this space at a very young age. So let's just go through the line a little bit and tell me your story about you and how you landed where you are at this particular moment. Let's just start with you, Benji.
Sure. Well, good morning, afternoon, whatever time it is. It is great to be here, and it is such an important conference. I just want to thank the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics for putting this on. By way of background, I'm Benji Backer. I grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, so right up the road, actually, a few hours. Proud cheesehead. You got some cheeseheads over here? Oh yeah, well I actually unfortunately went to the other UW in Seattle. It's very confusing. My parents went to the University of Wisconsin though, so I'm a Badger by trade as well, yes. So other than talking about the two UWs, I grew up in Appleton and I immediately fell in love with politics when watching John McCain and Barack Obama debate when I was 10 years old. And before my voice had even changed, I was knocking doors and making phone calls for candidates. My parents were not active in politics at all, so there's just kind of a natural feeling and inclination. And throughout high school, I did a lot of campaigning for candidates. I made the most phone calls for Scott Walker and his recall election way back when, and then spoke at a bunch of national conferences and became active in national politics. And I was constantly getting inspired by how much difference I was making as somebody who couldn't even vote yet. And that's just the beauty of the American democracy, is that each person's voice truly does matter, even in a time where it feels like it doesn't. And if my voice mattered when I was 16 and couldn't vote, it sure as hell matters now. And so I really was inspired by how much difference I could make, and I'm sure you all kind of have similar stories in that way, because that's what keeps us going. But fast forward to now, I founded the largest environmental organization for conservatives in the country, and we have 40,000 activists across the country in 200 communities. I just wrote a book that's coming out on Tuesday called The Conservative Environmentalist, and the next phase of my activism, which we'll tap into, really speaks to the heart of the urban-rural divide and how we can make the environment a nonpartisan issue again. It used to be nonpartisan. To me, the environment is nonpartisan. To me, fighting climate change is nonpartisan. We all share this earth, we all share our communities. This is not just about climate change politics. This is about our neighborhoods, this is about our economy, this is about our livelihoods, this is about our jobs, and this is about each other. And this is about relying on each other to solve something together. So I'm really excited to be talking about that, and I'll shut up for now.
Yeah, we're going to get into some specific strategies about that. And by the way, the book is for sale out there in the lobby. We're the first ones to sell it. Just
yes,
FYI.
it's out on Tuesday, and for some reason they were able to convince the publisher to give some out here.
We're just bridging divides on a daily basis here.
I can't even do that.
It's true. Really, tell us your story.
Well, hello, University of Chicago, Institute of Politics. My name is Whitley Yates, and I currently serve as the Director of Diversity for the Indiana Republican Party. I am the only Director of Diversity for a Republican Party in all 50 states. So I'm the only one in all the Republican parties. Thank you. I've been in my role for 4 years, and I didn't necessarily think that this is where I would be. By nature, I was in marketing, PR, and advertising, specifically multicultural marketing and storytelling, working with large Black brands to amplify representation in media. I got into politics in college. I went to Indiana University, the Indiana University. Here we go. And I started working on campaigns in college to get the third Black student body president elected at IU. I was, of course, successful, flips hair. And I guess I caught the political bug, so I consistently stayed working in marketing and PR and all of that, but also engaging in politics, usually working with minority candidates. Now, at this time, I hadn't chosen a side. I was really more about people over party because I really worked with and for people that I believed in. And then after moving to a couple of different cities and experiencing different things, I decided that I needed to make a decision on where my political identity stood. And that decision, as I call for most minorities in the Republican Party, a coming out, where you sit your family down and you tell them that although everyone in our entire family for generations has always been Democrat, I do believe that I possess some conservative values internally that I'd like to really explore. Is this a welcoming family where I have the freedom to do such things and not be shunned or outcast? No, my family was very supportive in that journey. And so I really just started working on Republican campaigns and elevating voices, specifically minority voices within the party. That led to me getting this role, creating this role for myself, and also starting a diversity leadership series. Because what I realized very quickly in the places and spaces that I occupied, outside of the fact that we know visually that a lot of people didn't look like us within the party, but that there was a barrier for inclusion. So outside of the physical representation of not seeing people that looked like you, you've never been invited to an event, you don't know where to go or how to start. So creating a leadership series that literally bridged the gap for minority communities to be able to participate and sit at tables that they had previously been on the table was something that I was able to cultivate 4 years ago. The program is still in existence. We have increased minority engagement, representation, and elected officials in Indiana by over 200% in the past 3 years. We elected our first Black Republican mayor in the state's history in November. We elected our first Black councilwoman in Fishers, Indiana, one of the most wealthiest counties in Indiana. So we have made history. We have more candidates on the ballot, and hopefully this will be nationwide soon, pending some dollar bills.
So I definitely am going to want to hear, I think all of us are going to want to hear about your first bridge that got divided over your kitchen table with your parents. But then before we bring on the moderator that you've all been waiting for, Manu, tell us about how you've arrived at your space.
Yeah, well, first of all, big round of applause for you to call an audible and get in here. So
Audible.
thank you for jumping in. Michael, nice to see you. It's an absolute pleasure to join both of you on this conversation. I have to say, as like the Indian guy on stage with glasses, politics is not like the vocation that I'm called to. My mom is still confused. You know, I started off as a pre-med student, so I'm curious. Are there any non-political science humanities students here by any chance? Just out of curiosity.
There's 7.
Okay, there we go. So, you know, the reason why I asked that question is, what's fascinating to me about this conversation, the moment we're in, is that I actually think that a lot of the solution to our political problems actually exists with people that are currently not engaged. And the way that I got involved was I went to school at UC Berkeley, started college in 2017, and I want to take you back to a day, February 2nd, 2017, that changed the trajectory of my life. You know, I think all of us have different stories and different moments that got us involved. For Benji, it was when he was 10. For me, it was when I was 18. And in that moment, I distinctly remember I was walking back from my math seminar, and we heard helicopters flying overhead, and we heard violence in the distance. And I distinctly remember walking past a cafe, and inside the windows broken, it said CNN, UC Berkeley students protest a speaker. Now, Berkeley, we've got a great relationship with activism, with social justice. It's a student body that's ripened for pushing things forward. But that day was different because it turns out that was the largest protest in the history of UC Berkeley since the 60s, since Dr. King came to campus. And what was it over? It was because a speaker came to campus that students felt deeply disturbed by. But to me, forget the speaker, forget the politics, as somebody with a pre-med hat on, the only thing I could just think about was, how did we get to a moment where you have one side of the student body that is so deeply disturbed by the person that's coming, and they're willing to skip class and make their voice heard outside. And on the other hand, you've got students that feel deeply about the need to stand up for what they believe in by inviting this person. And the craziest thing was that the next day when me and my friends were cleaning up campus in Sproul Plaza, and we were just concerned about the campus community, people were hurting, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of anger. What was crazy was that a lot of us just wanted to have a conversation. We just wanted to know, why is this happening? Let's just learn about each other's backgrounds. Let's put aside the CNN news clip and let's go beyond,
the media perception of who we are. And so we created this space for dialogue. We called it Bridge Berkeley. People thought it was a civic architecture frat. They were like, bridges, what kind of bridges are you building? And we said, no, figurative bridges. We held this space. It was amazing because it showed me one thing, which was that I think we radically overestimate how divided we are, and we radically underestimate the power of a conversation. Radically underestimate the power of a conversation. And that space from Bridge Berkeley grew to Notre Dame, Colorado Boulder, and over time, we've turned it into the largest youth movement to fight political division on campuses called BridgeUSA, and we've actually got some amazing IU Bridge chapter leaders here. So I'm grateful to be here, and thank you for the conversation having us.
Well, thank you. I'm going to leave you beautiful political nerds and bring on the moderator you've all been waiting for, Mr. Michael Strautmanis from the Obama.
I think I got tagged. You do? I think you got to tag me in some way.
Yeah. You've got intro music.
Okay, so I cut off my own intro music, but I would say this. Whenever when they tell you in podcasts that multitasking is not an effective way to do the things that you're trying to do, it's true. So I apologize for being late, but I'm actually grateful, and thank you for that, Jen. I'm actually grateful that I had a chance to hear the conversation and discussion, because I think that one of the things that I think you three can do for us is frankly give us some guidance. Because what I'm hearing at the Obama Foundation and throughout is people are afraid. They're afraid to have these conversations. They're afraid that people aren't going to like them. They're afraid they're going to get canceled. They're afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing and hurt and offend someone. And you three have shown yourselves to either be fearless or to be able to push beyond that fear into something meaningful. And so, Benji, I'd love to start with you and just get a sense from you about how to build durable and effective alliances. What you're trying to get done, combating climate change, is not going to be done by any one group,
Right.
Any one group of people, or even any one organization. And so you've got to find a way to bring people in who, frankly, don't agree with you, don't know why you're talking to them. So talk to me a little bit about, and talk to us a little bit about how to do that effectively. What's working?
Well, I actually would take a story, it's a great question. I would take a story from that your role with the Obama Foundation reminds me of, which is actually going back to the election that inspired me to get active. When John McCain and Barack Obama ran against each other, I'm sure you're aware of this, and many of you probably remember this moment. John McCain was at an event in Iowa, I believe, where he was asked a question about Barack Obama being an illegal citizen and basically all of these conspiracies. And John McCain, he could have said something like, oh, that's an interesting point anyways, and moved on. But he said, no, that is a good American, a good human being, and somebody that I care about. And we have political differences, but we still have the same mission and the same goals. We just have a different way of getting there. And we've lost that in politics today. We've lost that with our relationships. We can't even sit down with each other at the Thanksgiving dinner table with our family because we think that they're evil. And I grew up in Wisconsin in a very conservative community. Then I moved to Seattle, which is about as liberal as you can go. And I'm a conservative climate activist. The three of us on stage are perfect proof that politics is not so black and white. We aren't just 100% in one camp or 100% in the other camp. All of our life experiences make us into who we are politically. What we see, what we feel, what we experience makes our views different. And we have to respect that about one another. And, I campaigned against Barack Obama, but I respect him as a human being so much because he's a good human being. He's a good person. And I don't agree with him on a lot of policy, but I would sit down for dinner with him any time of day, and I would sit down with anybody like that any time of day. And my sisters are liberal, my parents are moderately conservative, and if we can get out of our echo chambers and realize that, okay, there is a percentage of the people who have bad intentions, but it's a very small percent.
Right.
The majority of Americans have good intentions, and you might think that they're super ignorant or super stupid, or you might have all these kind of assumptions, but they are well-intentioned people who want to do good. And if you go in with the guard up from the moment you start a conversation, you are always going to lose. And I go back to that John McCain story because you talk about fear or fearlessness. I don't think John McCain wanted to combat his own voter at his own event. But he had the balls, to do it. He had the courage to do it. And I think we all could have, we all have the courage within us to stand up for what is right in society and what is right for our communities, and to realize that we have so much more alignment than we give ourselves credit for. And the last thing I'll say on this, we don't need to look back too far to see that that's true. Like, people are like, oh, Benji, that sounds really nice. That's like a kumbaya, like, oh, you want to make the environment nonpartisan, that's cool. Well, it used to be. These issues used to be. We used to be able to sit down with each other at dinner, talk about differences, and then come up with a solution that was not a compromise, but something that benefited everyone there. We can do it again.
Yeah, I was just earlier this week at the LBJ Library and Foundation, and I had a conversation with a member of the Democratic House of Representatives in Texas who was around when LBJ was around, who said that LBJ told him to vote for the Voting Rights Act and that it wasn't going to be good for his politics. John McCain did that. I remember Barack Obama telling people, Democrats, to vote for health care, even though he knew that meant, and he told them that meant that they were going to lose their seats. And I think there is this opportunity for us to take a step back from winning and think about what's important for our society and for our country. And Whitley, I think that I, as a black man and someone who is on the liberal side and on the Democratic side, I just am so in love with what you are and what you're standing for, because I know the vitriol that can come your way around your identity. And so I lead with that to say, what are these, and I would assume that when you're online and when you're in the digital world, you get mostly people who express things from bad intentions. And so that might not be true, but I'm an old guy, so that's how I see it. And I wonder if there are these third spaces that are places in which you can find the temperature kind of taken down a little bit, where you can find spaces where you can build and have the opportunity to build that common ground. Do they exist? Are you creating them? Say more about where those places are for you.
That's a really great question, because I'm going to be honest and very transparent with you all. The vitriol that I receive online pales in comparison to the vitriol I receive in real life.
That's so sad.
And the threats of physical violence against me, my daughter, who I usually have with me, unfortunately she's not here today, are very disrespectful. But I'm also realizing that it's not just in spaces that I go into where people don't like me because of the designation or title that I hold. So there are people on the same side of the aisle as me where I'll walk into rooms and they won't respect me because I have diversity in the title of my name, or I am the physical representation of wokeism that is eradicating the party. That is what I represent to them. I will walk into other rooms filled with people who are liberal or progressive or socialist, and I will be the representation of tokenism, of someone that is there to parrot and to assimilate to white culture, to parrot and say things that I don't believe, to be disconnected from my own cultural identity, and to subscribe to a way of thinking, a political ideology that is not natural for me. And so there aren't the spaces to be. Last weekend I spoke at an educational diversity, equity, and inclusion conference. I was one of the panel speakers, and then I had my own session. And in my session, this room full of diversity practitioners from every university you could think of, before I got a chance to introduce myself, I had someone yell at me, "Why are you here?" I didn't even get to tell them my name. And I was my existence in that space was questioned as a diversity practitioner advocating for something on the right that is attempting to be eradicated. And my existence was questioned. And so I had to take the room from the temperature that it was, and I had to bring it down, and I had to say, I need you to see me for me, the intersectionality of everything that I am. Don't look at me as the title that I carry, but see me and see my story, and give me an opportunity to express myself in a way that you see intrinsic value in my experiences. And so as I'm going out and I'm having conversations in rural communities with Republicans that see me as an enemy, I have to remember the perspective that they're coming from, that they haven't been exposed to people that look differently than them. They've grew up in this town their entire life. They know everyone here, and their experiences are from a perspective that is completely different than mine. Just like when I walk into urban communities, I have to understand that my representation and being there could be triggering for them because the policies that have been predicated against those communities. So I have to consistently be aware of the perspectives of those that I'm speaking to, so that I understand how to approach. And when I'm attacked, I have to remain vulnerable so that we can still be able to make some type of common ground. I tell people that it's really important to build common ground with uncommon people, because it's in those moments where you're challenged, it's in those moments where you're thinking about how someone could believe that way, where you learn the most, and you then begin to value who they are and why they feel, believe, and advocate in the way that they do.
Well, that's incredibly powerful, and I'm going to stay with you for a minute.
Okay.
One, because I just think we all have to offer our affection and our love as fellow humans for against you feeling and experiencing threats of violence. So I think I'll just stay there for 1 second. I have to say that, and I think I speak for everyone who is here. So, thank you. That diminishes everyone's humanity. But I want, because I'm just so compelled by what you said, I wondered if you have some perspective that you can offer us. Because we now, I think, have to, when we see that happening, we've got to stand up as well. What are the tools that you use within yourself to put you in a position to be able to sit with that level of empathy, with that level of vulnerability? Is there anything that you do that you can help us? Because we're all going to start doing it too.
Yeah, I have a really great therapist.
No, that's real. Yes.
So I've realized that you can only meet people as far as they've met themselves. And so you not having a level of self-awareness to your own biases, to your own triggers, does not allow you to operate in that level of vulnerability. So understanding what makes you tick, what makes you upset, and how people get under your skin is very important. I would say I go in and my initial thought is to set intentions. So I will walk into a room, a speaking engagement, and I will set my intentions as the speaker of the room so that everyone is clear the direction in which I'm going in. And then I also let them know what I'm bringing. So I'm bringing accountability, I'm bringing transparency, I'm bringing honesty. And sometimes accountability will feel like an attack when you haven't done the work. And so I'm sorry if you feel attacked, but I'm holding you accountable because I need you to show up in a different way. Then after I set my intentions, I say that my goal is to engage and not enrage. And how that happens is completely dependent upon you and how you're attempting to engage. But if you keep that in the front of your mind, that I'm going to engage and not enrage, that even when someone else is enraged,
Yes.
I can maintain my level of cool and say, I'm just here to engage. It's really important. I had a very unique experience when discussing the Black Lives Matter movement and riots, that I was confronted with someone who had gone to January 6th and been a part of the insurrection. And we can talk about that offline because I'm not going to take up your day and how that exchange happened. But I had never been confronted in that way. And I never thought that I would actually be having that level of conversation with someone. But I had to remember that I'm not there to tell them that what they did is wrong. I'm there to challenge their thinking. So you cannot look at a movement of people who felt like they hadn't been heard and they hadn't been listened to. And then you tell me that you felt like you hadn't been heard and listened to for 4 months. And they've experienced this for 400 years. That their reaction was worse or more derogatory than yours. You should actually understand this movement more than anyone else. And so engaging without enraging, and then I would say this is probably gonna be the biggest one. You're gonna have to learn to disagree with decorum. I had to learn that one. I can be a little sriracha. I have some spice.
Okay.
I've got some sassiness.
All right. Okay.
I've got some spice in me, but you have to disagree with decorum, which means you have to keep it respectful. Because so quickly when someone says something, you say, oh, that was a dig. You know, Michelle said when they go low, we go high. But some people, when they go low, you limbo. And so I had to get out of the limbo spirit,
Yes.
right? And so I had to learn to disagree with decorum without getting disrespectful.
You know, I think there's so much in that around getting people out of their subconscious and out of their biases. And really, you know, I'm thinking about Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and you're in this situation where people are seeing everything except you. And in that way, at the end of the day, it's kind of not about you. And I try to remember that as well. So we're getting great tips. This is good stuff. I hope somebody's recording this because I'm paying attention. I can't take notes. Okay, thank you. So let's keep going, Manu. Help us. You talk about these conversations that you're having. How? How are you having them? What works? What doesn't work? You know, you're in a college campus in a situation where people are, you know, rewarded, I would say in many ways for having, you know, extreme views and expressing them in extreme ways. And you've been able to set up a space in which you're being able to create a meaningful, effective dialogue across difference. How?
I appreciate that, Michael. You know, I want to answer that question, but
Okay.
I want to hold on one quick thing that I actually think is a prerequisite to any conversation ever working. And that is that as I hear my two friends here, Benji and Whitley, talk about their story and their life. Benji's a conservative environmentalist. Whitley is a Black Republican. They are the definition of nuance. Nuance must be celebrated. E pluribus unum, out of many one. How have we gotten to this point where your label, your identity, means that you check 80 boxes on this side, and the moment you check one on this side, you're a bad person? Or let me change that actually. Evil.
Right.
Yeah. The fundamental precondition to a productive dialogue and conversation, whether it's a college campus, whether it's your family, whether it's your dinner table, whether it's the conferences that you're speaking at, is that we have to figure out how we prioritize nuance above outrage. We live at a moment in what some people might describe as the outrage industrial complex, where everything, whether it's money, it's traction, it's engagement, it's profit, it's driven by your ability to divide. I'll give you a quick story. 2017, when we started this, right? We started this panel off, I love the way that this panel has changed from a comedy session to us talking about how difficult this work is, but I want to tell you something. 2017, we started this work. I can't count on my fingers how many times, and I won't even tell you my politics, you can figure it out, how many times on my hands I was called a fascist for hosting a conversation between not right wing and left wing, but students of different perspectives that simply wanted to be heard.
Can I interrupt? I think on a college campus, it's interesting that people are using a word that they actually apparently haven't looked up in the dictionary.
And by them using it, they seem fascist in its use.
Right, exactly.
You know, those conversations, people used to say, look, you're getting these dialogues together. All you're doing is you're getting a bunch of people to talk to each other. This is some kumbaya nonsense. It almost sounds like you're selling broccoli to the world. Part of it's true. But now that, 4 or 5 years later, we're having a conference at UChicago talking about bridging divides. I would never have thought this would have been possible. Because while I was out there with some amazing young people and some amazing friends, I was 10% of the work doing this on the ground with college campuses. Nobody paid attention to the fact that there's one precondition to a successful democracy. Yes, we care about different policies, criminal justice, climate, we care about gun control, we care about social economic inequities in our society, but the fact is that you don't have a democracy if you can't talk to each other. It is that simple. There is no democracy if we can't talk to each other. So I just want to celebrate you two for the work that you do, because ultimately we have to figure out how we elevate nuance above outrage. The last quick thing I'll just say on this is that as we think about elevating nuance above outrage, I think one of the questions a lot of people my age will ask is, how do you deconflict passion for belief with dialogue? Mm-hmm. To bridge a difference does not mean that you put aside your passion for your beliefs. In fact, I think it is the ultimate sign of respect for a fellow human being to sit down across from them and try to tell them, I disagree with you, here's why. Because it means that I see you. I see your story. We have to change the narrative that bridging divides means peaceful reconciliation, when in fact I think it's one of the most heroic things you could be doing at a time where everybody's telling you to fight the good fight.
Yeah, that's great. I think, Benji, when I started thinking and paying attention to climate change, we were in the middle of this debate about the truth. Mm-hmm. Right? There's this sense that a scientific paper wasn't really a scientific paper, and pseudoscience was coming out, and I think that we've in a way gotten beyond that. I don't see that part. Now, what we do about it is an active debate, but the truth and the facts, whether it's because of what we experience or whether it's because where the debate has gone has shifted. And I guess I'd love for you to, one, is that right? Because you're in the middle of it. Two, how do you deal with disinformation, misinformation, and the sense that we can't talk around a common set of facts and even accept something as true across our geographic and political differences?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, which speaks to this urban-rural divide, and that a lot of the divide on environmental issues comes down to fear. And for the left, it's a fear that the world is going to end. And for the right, it's a fear that the policies to address that are going to make their world end. Mm-hmm. So when I was in high school, I was a conservative activist, obviously, as I mentioned, but I also believed inherently that we could just shut off fossil fuels tomorrow. I thought that we should ban fossil fuels. I was like this conservative that was like so anti-energy, so anti-oil and gas, like it was, kind of speaking to the politics not being so black and white. But then I learned a lot more about kind of the realities of our energy and how much we rely on it, but I also visited farming communities, ranching communities, oil and gas communities, coal communities, and I see firsthand why they're so scared. Mm. I mean, last October I visited Midland, Texas. It's the heart of America's oil and gas industry. I was with some of those prominent climate deniers that you know. And I will sit down with anyone, by the way. So I don't care that they're climate deniers. I don't care if people know that I was with them. And I toured a bunch of oil fields and met with a bunch of the workers there. And they expressed to me that they feel passionately about protecting the environment. What they're upset about, what they're frustrated by, is that the very people that they've given energy to for a century or more, that they work long, hard, difficult hours that I cannot relate to from a physical on the job site perspective. They are doing that to provide cheap, affordable power to all of us, and then we're talking down to them like they suck. And that we're gonna go to their communities and say, you suck, we're ripping all of this from you, and we want you to go away. But yet they're the ones who've been powering our lives. And so that's how disinformation spreads, because they want to latch on to anything that they can that defends their community, right? And sure, there's a few people at the top who are probably aware that they're spreading the disinformation, but most of the people who are buying into it are just desperate. They need leadership. They need people to stand up for them. They are not climate deniers. They want to deny the solutions that that appear like they're going to hurt them. So if we want to, whether it's COVID or climate change, it's proven that like science doesn't really matter in people's day-to-day lives. What matters in their day-to-day lives is how we can help them.
Yes.
And a scientific paper does not do that. A policy agenda, a narrative that isn't these people suck and they need to go away and we hate you, if there's a policy agenda that doesn't speak to them in that way, they're going to buy into it. Mm-hmm. And that's why when Duke University did a study that said in 2015, before I was even active in this climate space at the level that I am, 40% of Republicans at the time believed in climate change. When they were presented with a solution that fit their values, it over doubled to 80%, 85%. People are not scared of environmental protection, they're scared of losing their lives. And if we can build those bridges, which largely speaks to the urban-rural divide, you're going to get buy-in from the rest of America, and that's what my mission is.
I love that. And I think that what I sense is often a resistance to share a narrative that works for someone because, as I have often said, people think it's more important to feel right than to make the change that they want to see. And that will block us, I think, from having the common ground that you're doing such a great job building. Whitley, talk to us now about how to move this into civic life, right? You're having these discussions, you're in these unusual places, you're committed to being there and having the dialogue. And yet, as Manu said, we have to also have a functioning democracy where people feel like that they can make change, that their voice matters, that their vote matters. And so, do you have any guidance for us on how to take this conversation into a civic space that allows us to act in common?
I would say yes. So part of my story is I spent most of my adolescence in a rural county in Indiana, Knightstown. I lived in an orphanage in a rural county with no one that looked like me. We watched NASCAR on the weekends and listened to country music. And then I spent the rest of high school in the inner city in Indianapolis with a bunch of people that looked like me, wearing Jordans and Hardboy outfits, because that was what we were wearing at the time, apparently. And so I've gotten to experience a rural upbringing, learning how to hunt, how to skin a deer, how to fish, and then the urban core. What people don't necessarily understand is that some of the issues that are facing us right now are equal opportunity. So they don't care if you live in an urban community because poverty is equal opportunity. Discrimination is equal opportunity. Addiction is equal opportunity. There are common misconceptions about other people's experiences because they haven't been exposed to them.
Right.
So there is a misconception that there is no hunger, there's no poverty, there's no strife in rural communities. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who spends 87% of her time in rural communities, that I've seen that level of poverty. As someone who grew up in poverty in an urban community and a rural community, I know that both are experiencing the same thing. It's just one is densely populated in a project or a community or a housing addition, and one may be miles and miles apart. And so I think that we really just have to kind of understand that we are all experiencing things at different levels, but the issues impact us.
Yes.
And so as we are traversing and attempting to bridge the divide, you must understand that you need to be solutions focused, right? Be a solutionary, because it's so easy to talk about the problems. And focusing on those solutions and where you can find common ground and build unity without uniformity is important.
Well, you were dropping these little gems. There are two mics in the audience, and I'd love to see if there are any questions from the audience. We have probably a good 10 minutes left.
That's for you.
And so hopefully we'll get through a few questions. It looks like we have one over there. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Right, definitely. Hi, I'm Caden Nix. I'm a second year at the University of Chicago. My question kind of relates off of like Benji's point on just climate change and why sort of a denying agenda appears. And so I kind of want to relate it back to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how, admittedly, I mean, there's a large population in the US that feels that they're personally and negatively impacted by this sort of movement. And so I guess my question is, how do we promote diversity in identity and diversity in thought in a way that makes it so that we don't have, like, we don't need a diversity official or office because it's a common practice for all of us. We all benefit from it.
Well, first of all, before someone takes that, kudos for asking a question. You know, there are a great question. You know, there are people here who we've brought here to talk. I'm sorry, if you want to, be on a panel, you got to find your own panel to be on. So let's do questions and not speeches. Great job. Does anybody want to take that?
Go ahead, Benji.
I'd be happy to. And Caden, thank you for the great question. That's an amazing question. I think what it comes down to is that the reason that we need diversity officers is because we don't understand each other. Like it's truly because we don't understand each other. And if we understood each other, it wouldn't be possible, or it wouldn't be needed to have that. And I think one of the things that I find is inherently true with every person that is a bridge builder or someone like Whitley or Manu is that, I mean, you just talked about growing up in a rural community and then being exposed to the urban, like you've seen it all, so you have this perspective, and that's why you're leading like this. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be doing that. So the people who are missing the right information, the people who are spreading disinformation, the people who are dividing us, and the reason we need diversity officers is because we are so disconnected from each other as a society. And the only path forward is to get into those communities and have those hard conversations and talk to those people. I think AOC could really be benefited by visiting a place other than New York City. And I think that Donald Trump could really benefit from going and talking to the inner city of America. Like, these people fundamentally do not understand a huge portion of the population. And that's why I give kudos to you. I mean, the fact that you are willing to talk to a January 6th insurrectionist and the black community that thinks that you're evil and a January 6th insurrectionist for being a Republican, I mean, that is what we need. We need more of her. Like, that's what we need. And we won't need diversity officers if we have more of her. She won't need it in her title. So that's the America that I think we can build. And that's up to our generation. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to all of us.
I love it. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sahana. I'm a UChicago alumnus that now works for the Cato Institute. My question kind of segues off of what was just talked about with diversity and sort of freedom of thought. I've seen, and we all know that, like, sort of freedom of speech, freedom, liberty, those have become exclusively conservative talking points. I strongly believe that nobody's free unless everyone's free, like liberation for all, like all of these concepts. So I guess, how would you all as young people encourage other young people to sort of view, I don't know, diversity of thought, freedom of speech, and concepts like that as less of a partisan issue? Do you think it's possible? And I guess that question goes to like Manu more because you've started your journey because of the whole Berkeley protests. So yeah, do you think that it's possible to sort of depoliticize that concept because it's really become entrenched in one side of, I think, the partisan divide when it comes to being champions of liberty or freedom?
It's a really good question. I was just thinking about, and what was your name?
Sahana.
Sahana, nice to meet you. So I was thinking about what Benji was saying, what Whitley was saying earlier about the fact that they've got these nuanced identities where they're interested in solving problems as opposed to the partisan divide. And then you just asked a question, which is, why is it that freedom just seems to be on the right when you believe in freedom, we believe in freedom, there's perspectives across the board. And what this brings me to, Michael, is that I think there's a new divide in our politics. I think there's a new divide in our politics. I think the political coalitions of the future are not going to be left-right. And here's why. So every year we host an annual summit where we bring together our college students from across the country. We've got about 65 colleges, 20 high schools, about 10,000 students across the country focused on this work, and it's only growing. The memberships of college Democrats and Republicans are rapidly declining, while BridgeUSA memberships are increasing, because I think that most people are interested in a new way. So we've got all these students at the summit, right? And you would think, listening to Bridging Divides, well, these guys are a little centrist, a little squishy, moderates, what do they really believe? Milquetoasty ideas, And you show up to the summit, you got young people from the farthest to the left to the farthest to the right, from different identities, different groups, different backgrounds. They disagreed on the what, but they agreed on the how. I think the new divide in our politics is between people that want to be open-minded and people that want to be closed-minded. I think the new divide in our politics are between people that stand for freedom and people that believe in tyranny. I think the new divide in our politics are people that believe in democracy and people that believe in authoritarianism. I think the new divide in our politics is whether or not I believe that you have a voice at the table, irregardless of what you believe, because I think that the ability to have the discussion is going to shine a spotlight on what you might believe. I think that's the new divide. And you might think, well, that's not tangible. Open-mindedness, closed-mindedness, well, what do you actually believe? The fact is right now, regardless of what party you look at, nobody's solving any problems. We got a preconditioned issue, and that is that we can't talk to each other. So I think the question is, the future coalitions are those that can rally people around those talking points, because those talking points lay the table for you to actually talk about climate, talk about democracy, talk about criminal justice.
It's good. Yes.
Hello, my name is Manar Fajors. I'm a student at the University of Chicago. And being a student, I see people like to conform to certain groups, right? They like to conform to racial, ethnic, cultural, religious groups. And I think I want to hear your perspective on why people like to do that. Is it something based on the way people look, or is it more about how people think? And how can we create a more unified American culture? Because you guys are all from different backgrounds, ethnic, religious, and yet you're on the stage, and there's something that unites you, right? And so how do we create that, starting from the youth all the way to the elderly in this country?
Yeah, I mean, in a dangerous, scary world, it's often you sort of want to and flee to people who look like you, sound like you, know you in that way. I think it's a great question. Anyone want to?
I'll just take it quickly. It's not because people look different. It's because people want to be comfortable. People, we are so scared of getting uncomfortable and being proven wrong also. I mean, I hate being wrong, okay? I'm the first to admit it.
I can attest to that as his friend.
Yeah.
He's talking about this bridging divides thing, but we got a lot of divides.
Yeah, I got my own to figure out. No, we hate being uncomfortable. I mean, you think, why do we love going on our phones the moment we have a break? Because it's comfortable. We want to be in our own little groups because it's comfortable. And I was at dinner with this guy yesterday who is very successful, one of the probably wealthier people in this area. And he came from nothing. And I asked him kind of how he got there. And he said, because I was always willing to be uncomfortable. And he asked his kids, who are also very successful now, because a lot of rich people do not raise successful kids because they think everything is given to them. And he asks his kids every Friday, what made you really uncomfortable this week? And every week they would say something different, and if they complained about it, they'd have to come up the next week with a solution of how to solve what they were complaining about. We need to get uncomfortable in America again, because every uncomfortable conversation, every problem that we face is going to be solved through like respectful dialogue and debate, and that is uncomfortable. Seeing opposing opinions is very uncomfortable, but we need to be doing that constantly. Otherwise, we're just going to go deeper and deeper into our tribes and go to that tyranny and authoritarianism. And that's what we're going towards because we want to be safe, but it's actually the least safe thing we can do. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would also add that even if you don't know if someone is like you, just by looking at that one element of their identity, like race, you are going to just assume that there are some type of cultural unification that like we can connect on. I don't have to know you, but if I see you in the airport, my brother, I don't even know you. Right. And because of those thoughts and those ideas and the biases that we have predicated on what we see, it just makes it feel comfortable. And everyone is searching for comfortability. And so, as he said, we need to be leaders that are uncomfortable. I have an entire speaker series about uncomfortable leadership, what that looks like, and how to effectively do it when you're consistently being in abrasive situations.
Good. Okay. Well, we're going to need that. Yes.
Hello, my name's Alejandro. I'm a master's student at the University of Oxford. And I had a question, based on what we've heard so far at this conference, we've heard a lot about polarization and how people have been unable to have conversations across political divides. But we haven't heard too much about people who are burnt out of politics and who feel alienated from politics. In your experiences, how have you tried to engage with those people and get them back into political conversations without letting them get polarized?
Before you answer, I just will tell the audience, this is our last question. And so whoever's going to answer it, make it good.
Oh, dang, I was going to answer it. Pressure. No, so political apathy is real. And that has come from a lot of lying, a lot of placating and performative leadership at all levels of our government, where people that are insiders, that are supposed to be changing and creating laws, legislation, regulation, and taxation for us, are acting as outsiders, and they're performing and telling us what's wrong with the system that they're elected to change. The people who have elected us have sent us into these rooms and said, advocate for us and do what's right. The policy is not hitting the people. The purpose and their intentionality of what they're creating is personal. So the power is no longer in the people's hands. So when you cannot feel any resonance of change from what a politician or leader is doing, you become disenfranchised with engaging, disenfranchised with dialogue. And many Americans right now are in survival mode because of the housing crisis, food deserts, and financial issues. And so if I can never see a direct impact from the work that you're doing in advocating for me or producing legislation for me, I do not have the time to devote to be civically engaged, because civic engagement is a luxury for those who don't have the time. If you're working a 9-to-5 and you're just trying to figure out how to put gas in your tank to get to your job tomorrow, if you're trying to figure out who's gonna watch your child while you have to work extra so you can make a little money because it's back to school time and you just wanna buy your child that one thing, you don't have time to be looking and seeing what side of the aisle, what do you believe? Do I take off work to sit at these forums and listen to these ideas when the ideas and the policies and the personalities never create any meaningful purpose in your life? So in order to affect real change, to disrupt systems that have not been successful in everyday people's lives, to cure the apathy of the political right, left, and all of that in between, we need to feel and see the impact, because civic engagement is a luxury in this country, and that's what's unfortunate. So till the power goes back to the people and we begin to actually feel and see how these policies are positively benefiting us, you're going to continue to see that apathy.
Well, a couple things I'd just say to wrap us up. The first is, I feel better about the world knowing that these three are in it. This has helped me. I'm gonna sleep better tonight. I also would say that the Obama Foundation just is so thrilled to be in close physical proximity and in close value proximity with the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics. This is exactly what President Obama wants to do with his post-presidency, and that is to help inspire, empower, and connect a new generation of leaders. So it's a privilege for me to be with you. Let's please thank our panelists.
Oh, we did. I have to take my water.